Thanks, Ian. And again, a special welcome to Serge Etele, who's with us today or last night, today, and tonight. Serge is spiritual leader of the Jewish people in Cameroon, and so he'll be talking a little bit later at 12:30, a question and answer during lunch, and then tonight again he'll be doing a multimedia presentation. So we're really delighted and excited and honored to have him here. A DEA officer stopped at a ranch in Texas and talked with the old rancher. He told the rancher, "I need to inspect your ranch for illegally growing substances." The rancher said, "Okay, but don't go in that field over there." The DEA officer exploded, saying, "Do you not know who I am? I'm a DEA officer. I work for the United States government. I can go wherever I want. This badge is my ticket in." The old rancher says, "Okay, suit yourself." And so about an hour later, he hears screams coming from that place over there as the DEA agent is running, and a bull is behind him. And he's screaming, "Help me, help me." And the rancher runs over to the gate and says, "Show him your badge. Show him your badge." Power, right? Power. The power of a badge, power of a uniform, seeing a police officer behind us. Power. It's not just with DEA agents and police officers. Power is what is at the core, the center of every aspect of our life, whether it's politics, whether it's community, whether it's family, whether it's relationships. Power is at the center, and we don't know what it is, and we don't know where it is, and we don't know how it is, and we don't know what to do with it. We don't know if it's good. We don't know if it's bad. We want it until we get it, and then we don't know what to do with it, and then we don't want it, or we think people have it, and they don't have it. They think we have it, we don't have it. I mean, it is an impossible thing to understand power. Is it good? Is it bad? I guess it depends. Lord Acton famously said, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely," right? And yet, the Jewish tradition believes, yes, power can corrupt and can be destructive. However, there's a debate in our tradition, and the end of the debate is this. Who is a gibor, it says in the Mishnah, right? Who is a warrior, a hero in this lifetime? Not one who gets rid of his yetzer hara, this desire for power. You don't get rid of it, at least not from a Jewish perspective. What do? You subdue it. You harness it. You learn to use it and not be used by power. Because the rabbis say without power, no chicken would ever lay an egg, no couple would ever procreate, nobody would go get a job, hospitals wouldn't be built, lives wouldn't be saved. Power. The definition of power in the dictionary, the ability to do or to act. Doing, accomplishing something of worth. Power. Right? Power is not something just to be loathed or to be feared, but to be understood, to be harnessed. And that's what this week's Torah portion is all about. If you read this week's Torah portion like an elementary school kid, it's a little bit silly, right? And that's how we tend to leave it as Jews. We kind of graduate at 13 years old, and we apply our 13-year-old mindset and view of the world to Torah later in life when we're adults. And this week's Torah portion exemplifies that, right? The golden calf, the infamous golden calf. On the one hand, it seems like a silly child's tale. And it is if you don't unpack it, and you don't understand it, and you don't look at it, trying to understand this idea of power. So we read today, Vayar ha'am ki voshesh Moshe l'redet min ha'ar. And the people saw that Moses tarried in coming down from the mountain. V'ikahel ha'am al ha'aron. And the people gathered on or against Aaron, Vayomru alav, and they said to him, Kum aseh lanu Elohim, and rise up, Aaron, and make for us gods, asher yelchu lefanenu, that shall go before us, ki zeh Moshe, because this Moshe, ha'ish, this man Moshe, asher ha'alnu me'eretz Mitzrayim, that lifted us, brought us up out of the land of Egypt, lo yadanu ma hayalo, we have no idea where he is. And in the absence of this man who's no longer a man, these people start to panic. Why? Because they are powerless. Why? Because they have outsourced their power, their individual power. They've given over their voice, their ability to act to this man, turning him into more than just a man. Right? Turning him into an Elohim, a God. So what do? What does anybody do when they feel powerless, when they feel the void at the center of their being, at the center of their lives, growing moment by moment, day by day? What do? We throw things in the void. We try and make the void go away. Spoke about it on the high holidays. We try and find some semblance of power when we feel powerless. How did they do it? And Aaron said to the women, remove your earrings from your wives and your daughters' ears and nose, and bring them to me. And the people took all of these earrings, and they brought them to Aaron, and he took them from the hands, and he fashioned a golden calf, a molten calf, and he said, Ele Elohecha Yisrael asher helucha me'eretz Mitzrayim. These are your new gods, right? These are your new gods. This is now what you can put your certainty, your faith into. Unfortunately, again, we read this as children, and we think that the idea of idolatry is bowing down to some silly golden cow, some silly golden calf, totem poles or pictorials of other gods. That's not what idol worship is in Judaism. Right? What's the second commandment? Lo yihyeh Elohim acharim al panai. You shall not have God substitutes. So it isn't a totem pole that's a problem. It's believing that that totem pole or that golden calf or anything or everything is God other than God himself, herself, right? This is not about worshiping those totem poles. It's about worshiping those things outside of ourselves that we've given power, we've handed our power over, and then in the end we feel powerless. Religion and Judaism have a bad rap, and I hear it all the time. Isn't religion, but I can only speak for my own religion, isn't Judaism just another man-made construct, artificial, to give more men, or certain men, particular men, power? Isn't that what it is? The Kohen Gadol, he gets power. The Rabbi, he gets power. Moses in the Torah, he had power. You go to any one of these individuals, and somehow they have the right, the power to absolve you of your sin. Or in other religions, if you believe in that particular person, somehow it washes away your sin, your iniquity. I think of Karl Marx's statement, religion is an opiate for the masses. And oftentimes we do. We turn religion into an opiate to numb the anxiety that we have in our lives so that we can place upon the anxiety someone else, somewhere else, because we don't want to own our power. It's scary to have power. It's scary to feel the responsibilities and the duty of power. However, that's not authentic religion. That's not authentic Judaism for sure. When you read through the Torah, you do not see a God asking us to hand over power to God or to another person. We see this over and over again. People want to do it, by the way. It doesn't make it right. In this week's Torah portion, the Israelites want to just hand over their power to a man. That's not what God intended. Right? Remember when God called upon the Jews, the Israelites, to give them the Torah. Who did he want to talk to? God wanted to talk to everybody. And what was the response of the Israelites? It's too scary. It's too much responsibility. It's too much power. So who did they appoint? They appointed Moses. They didn't want to deal with God. How many Jews didn't leave Egypt? We had this conversation about a month ago. The vast majority. Why did most of the Israelites stay in Egypt, where they were expected to worship Pharaoh, where they had to be slaves? Because at least in Egypt, they got one square meal a day. At least in Egypt, they felt taken care of. Better to be a slave in Egypt from their worldview than to go out into the desert and be alone and yet powerless. And most of the Israelites died in Egypt. They didn't make the Exodus. But when you read through the Torah, that's not what the Torah wants at all. There's this idea of indentured servitude in the Torah. And the idea is that, in their particular era, it made sense to become an indentured servant so that you could start a new life. But you could only be an indentured servant for 7 years. After the 7th year, or on the 7th year, you had to be set free. However, the Torah talks about, what do you do with that person who doesn't want to go free? What do you do with them? Remember the remedy? You put them against the doorpost, you take their ear, and you pierce it against the doorpost where the mezuzah goes, right? Why the ear? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The central tenet in Judaism is that there is only and can only be one source of power, and it's not your slave master. And so if this slave or this indentured servant is going to remain there, at least he or she is going to have to face him or herself every single day, reminding themselves that they have just outsourced their power to this person, to this man. They had the right to go free, but they didn't want to go free because it was scary. It was too much for them. And so they would rather live powerless, handing over, outsourcing their power to another. But that's not what the Torah calls upon the people to do. Over and over again, there are texts that say, own your power. Like, for instance, the fact that many of the stories in the Torah revolve around the youngest son ascending to being the one in charge. In their world, it was a birthright order, right? You were the oldest son, and you were guaranteed power. And then came along the Torah, and you see Isaac, and you see Jacob, and you see Joseph, and you see David. These are the low men on the totem pole, right? They have older brothers, and yet they're the ones who rise in power. Why? Because Judaism is a meritocracy. It's not a theocracy at the end of the day. You are what you do, right? You are as powerful as you make up your mind to be. And even if you're the last in the birth order, you can rise up like Jacob and like Isaac. And that's exactly what they did. Even the Hebrew word for Israelites is ivri. It's outsider. It's others, right? What is the Torah about? It is about being the outsider, being the other, being the underdog, being the stranger, and yet not remaining powerless in being on the outside. It's about saying that just because we're on the outside doesn't mean we have to be powerless. We have the power to make the move towards the inside. Read through the Torah and figure out who the great men are, where they come from. And almost all of them are shepherds. They're not warriors. You look at King David, who's born a lowly shepherd. And shepherds time and again rise up to places of power. And my favorite teaching, the one that's coming up, which I mentioned earlier, the Passover story, the Exodus, right? You read through this tale, and it is a tale about power. The great mighty Pharaoh, right? The sun god, the center of the universe, is brought down in this reading by whom? Not by Moses, by two lowly midwives who simply fear God. So they do what's right, and they spark a revolution. Not so different than Rosa Parks and many other great revolutions, by the seemingly powerless taking back their power. And that leads to other women in the Exodus, Batya and Yocheved and Miriam, all of a sudden taking back their power, reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. And then if you read on and you look at the Midrash, it says these women become powerful, and then they empower their men, their husbands, and their sons, and that's where the revolution began, with a couple lowly midwives saying, enough is enough. I am woman. Hear me roar. No, that's a different source. Well, what do we do? Why do we do this? Why do we turn men like Moses into gods? It's a very complicated conversation. But it's been going on for thousands of years. There's a magazine called Moment Magazine. It just came out this past week. And this cover is called The Messiah Issue. It's a great issue. If you don't have it, you can get it online. I'm going to repost a couple articles on my website. But it talks about the ongoing Mashiach, Messiah issue that has been part of our conversation as Jews for thousands of years. For thousands of years, I know this is hard to believe, we have debated what it means to be the Messiah, and there's really no uniform opinion, right? 2 Jews, 3 opinion. Now, compound that over thousands of years and thousands of voices. There are so many ideas of what the Messiah will be. But the predominant view is that it is not a knight in shining armor riding in on a white horse to save the day. That is by and large not the Jewish view of the Messiah. We read in the Talmud, the 3rd century teacher Shmuel taught, the Messianic age does not differ from the present, except for the fact that it will be at a time when Israel is no longer powerless. And Maimonides' Rambam adds, and when individuals are no longer powerless. When the Mashiach shows up, She will empower us, not disempower us. She will not demand that we believe in her. She or he or whatever this time will be a time when we feel a sense of our own power, when we feel empowered, not outsourcing it yet to one more figure. Moses was never meant to be the Messiah. That's why we read in this week's Torah portion, Moses was just a man, just like you and just like me, with real doubts and real struggles, and he had his hard time owning his power. Read about Moses at the beginning of his journey. This is not a powerful man. This is a man who is terrified of taking on power, taking on responsibility, taking on leadership. He is racked full of doubt. Look at the Adam and Eve story, right? Doubt is what creeps into the garden. Doubt is what creeps into their minds and their relationship. Doubt is what ultimately destroys them. Doubt is what ultimately destroys the Israelites in this week's Torah portion. They don't know where Moses is. And in his absence, in the void, they start to wonder. They start to second guess. They start to doubt. How many of us in our lives spend the majority of our lives doubting? Doubting the world, the economy, our jobs, our financial security. Did you know that the average person has 60,000 thoughts a day? Study was done. I have no idea how they figured this out or study it. It seems a little bit challenging of a subject to study, but they figured out that 98% of those 60,000 thoughts that you've had are the same ones you had yesterday, right? It's not that new. We're not that original. And of those 60,000 thoughts, and of that 98%, 80% of those are negative. Negative thoughts. The vast majority of what goes through our head is negativity. And what does the negative speak? It is doubt. It is picking the world apart, picking others apart, picking ourselves apart. Why? Because that's the way we're built. And from a Jewish perspective, that is not a bad thing. We have an opportunity because of that doubt to face the doubt, as did Moses, as did the Israelites, as have every man and woman since then, to face the doubt and to battle it back, and to subdue it, and to overcome it. We are not here to succumb to the doubt, to succumb to our natural selves, right? Judaism, in a nutshell, is to take the natural and become supernatural, to go beyond what comes so naturally, like self-doubt. So what are we supposed to do as Jews? We're supposed to own our power. You're not supposed to hand power over to the rabbi. He doesn't do Judaism for you, or she. The cantor is not here to pray for us. Doctors are not there to heal us. Teachers are not there simply to teach our kids. We have a role in this as parents. We can't just outsource the power to teachers, as great as they are. We have a duty as a parent to teach our own kids. I hear this all the time, husbands and wives not wanting to do the work. And so they'll come to me or to a trained therapist or to somebody else to kind of solve their problems for them. What do? We outsource fighting to military men and women. We outsource working in fields to immigrants. We outsource our laws to politicians. We outsource, right, this kind of utopian vision to the president. Write in and fix it and make it all better and make the uncertainty and the doubt go away. But that is a golden calf. That is what it means to erect a golden calf. That is what it means to bow down to a golden calf. Not to make a silly little all-beef golden burger, right? That's not a golden calf. What is a golden calf? It's an idea that anytime you fail to own your God-given power and you hand it over to somebody else, hook, line, and sinker, you have built and worshipped a golden calf. So let me end with this. I usually end with a Marianne Williamson quote, but I just have to find something new. So this is from the Hopi elders. You have been telling the people that it is the 11th hour, but the Hopi elders write, you must go back and tell the people that it is now, that this hour, and there are things to be considered and done. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relationship? Where is your water coming from? Know your garden. Speak your truth. Create your community, be good to each other, and do not look outside of yourself for anybody else to be your leader, for anybody else to give you power. It is your power, and this is a good time to reclaim it. There is a river flowing very fast. It's so great and swift right now that there are those who are afraid, and they will continue to be afraid. And they will hold on with every ounce of their being to the shore. and they will feel like they are being torn apart, and they will suffer greatly. But if you own your power, then go out into the middle of the river. The elders say, push off from the shore. Keep your eyes open, your head above water, and hold hands to the person next to you, and flow down the river powerfully as you celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves, gather your power. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are powerful. As we move into Passover, it is an opportunity for each and every one of us to ask ourselves, what or who have we turned into a golden calf? How have we outsourced our power? And it's about time that we take it back. Shabbat Shalom. With that, we're going to put on our badge.